talking about, and we were just catching up in that. I have no idea how many years it's been because you came here after, I believe, Last Comic Standing.
That's right. I remember that was the first time I met you.
So
we had a lot of shows. They were all sold out. It was the
Yes.
first. You were my first stop. Now, I'd always been I'm a road comic. Like
Right.
I never, but you were my first stop in the middle of that. I think it was
Right.
during it when it was
Right.
like, and I couldn't believe how, but I was like that headliner that people were like, oh, we don't know who she is, but we already have a sitter. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
And I came here and there were like 7 or 8 shows all sold out. And
Yes.
I saw the power of those 18 million viewers, and now we struggle to get people to show up at 9 o'clock because my demographic wants to go to bed.
Oh, sure. Well, that's the reason we do 6:30 and 8:50 now because
Yeah.
you can't even say 9 o'clock in this town.
That's
you
funny.
can't even hint. You can't even go there. But you know what how you rolled around with us was, and this was the most common thing with Last Comic Standing type acts. First time in, you sell
Yep.
1,200 tickets.
Yep.
Next time in, it's 700-800
Yep.
tickets, and it just, unless you get something on TV
That's
like
right.
fast, it just, because that's the way those shows
Well,
are.
you also have to come back with my, honest to God, my people I've learned over the years, I have to keep, like, I'll crush places, sell them out 2 weeks in advance, and the places that I've been continuously going to years and years in a row.
Right.
And it'll be the same people, and it's very kind. They'll come, and it's like I basically should have punch cards for people because they will
Right.
just follow me. But if I stop going for a while, like, we'll do better next time. It's the reverse of when I did well before because of TV. Now we'll do better the next time I'm here because I've been so long. They'll go tell their friends. They need to know to look for
Right.
me here.
Well, I think what happens here is that, especially with an act like yourself, is that you do create, but we're a mid-sized market. We're not a larger. So all of a sudden, numbers go down here, so the revenue goes down,
Yeah.
and then your agent goes, but we can get this in enough other markets,
Yeah.
and then it just kind of, and like, there must have been 15 acts like you that happened,
Mm-hmm.
and then, and of course I keep up with you. I see you out there,
Oh,
of course I'll be, and so we got to the place a few years ago, maybe even before the pandemic, I think, to where, we're 38 years here. We've been doing this for so long, and we're fine and we're comfortable. And it got to a place where it was like, I want to bring these acts in that I don't know whether they have a following here or not. And they command a certain, fee that exactly that what they should make is fair. Let's just do it. It ain't, in other words, I want to get the people back in there. It ain't going to matter in the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
And it's been so much fun.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
and
that's
getting you back on this,
Well, you're sweet. Thank you. That's what made me
You're
happy that
so,
it's busy.
And I don't want to sound weird. You're so easy to watch.
Oh, thank you.
I
That's
mean,
a
you know
nice
what I mean?
compliment.
And I mean, it's like you're almost, and thing is that you're Italian and you got that kind of thing, but you're almost, it's just such a you're so comfortable.
Thank you.
Comforting with your comedy is just, I don't know, it's like a back rub.
Well, hey, well,
like a
nice
and
that's
hilarious.
A beautiful compliment. I've been doing it 30 years this year,
yeah.
and it's really, the travel is really hard. That's very hard, but it's a choice I made to be in a small town so my son can have a normal life. And but I love what I do, even though this is not meant for people who are pure monologists. Now, you have to have a podcast, you have to have a huge social media thing, you have to have all that stuff because that's who's taking over. But if you're funny, people will find you. And I started thinking, like, I just have to talk about what is funny to me, not try to pander to the masses. Let's just talk to the people who are like-minded. and let's just see what happens. And I just started staying right in there, and also realizing that maybe this is the last time someone's going to laugh. What if today, like a guy came tonight and his family, he was in the hospital and they were upset because they had tickets and they thought that he was going to pass, and he forced them to come. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And then he showed up because he got better and stuff. But I'm like, see, that's the whole idea. What if you never see those people again? What if they never show up again? What if it's their last night? Hopefully they just laughed a little bit.
Oh, right.
You know? That's it.
Moment to moment.
That's it.
Yeah, moment to moment. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm going to have to work until I forget my act. That's pretty clear. Like, I also started at a deficit.
Quits performing? I mean, I don't know.
Anybody who does has, to me, it's like they've achieved something that they don't know. Like, and you were always fair with me, and you always paid me what I felt was commiserate to guys. But I didn't always make the same as my male compatriots. And I didn't realize that till the pandemic, when we all started having these conference calls and talking about money, because comics never really talked about money because it was just a weird thing. We know that everybody was a little bit different and stuff. Right. But then I started looking at, like, I had all these credits and these guys that have this many credit, and they were making more than me because as a woman, when I started 30 years ago, it was a novelty act. And women just weren't making it. So I think I had all those years to try to catch up. You were always fair. But a lot of places weren't.
It's interesting because it never even occurred to us to pay someone different because of gender or anything. It really came down to, we had a budget for people that didn't sell tickets,
right,
but are great acts, and you had that budget. And then you had a budget for people maybe that didn't really move a lot more tickets, but we're at a higher level of excellence, for lack of something else to say. They just were, and you just kind of had that. And then it all was all about ticket sales.
Yeah, and you also have to figure out, like, look, my people are going to come, they're going to eat, they're going to drink, because this is their only night out for months. So they're really going to make a night out of it, Which,
here, that's all my crowds.
Right. Oh, that's awesome.
Because you go here, I mean, our bread and butter is 55 to 80.
That's the best.
I mean, that's our bread and butter. And they're wonderful. But I love when the younger people come in. And so here you can get in when you're 18.
Yeah, I saw that out front.
Right. So, and we've, at times other club owners will go, why? They can't drink. You can't really make money. I go, but what does an 18-year-old becomes an adult? And then what the hell have they got to be adult with the drinking age now, 21? There's nothing changes, right? Yeah. And so at least this is something that so it's like almost like a rite of passage when you turn 18 here. You can go to the comedy club.
Awesome.
And I love when I get those 18, 19-year-olds in. Doesn't matter
and
who
they come as a family. Like this last show, there were 2 daughters, 18, 24, and then the mother and father. And they come in, and their generation has been watching stand-up comedy on television since as long as their whole lives. We were relegated to the Tonight Show. Mm-hmm. I don't know, maybe a couple of specials,
shows,
albums. Albums. You heard albums.
Exactly right.
You had a cassette tape that you listened to over and over.
That's
I can tell you that Eddie Murphy Delirious. If I say, and that's a fire, and you don't understand what that means, or Aunt Bunny fell down the steps, if you don't understand that that's from Eddie Murphy Delirious, I can't be friends with you. Like, we knew everything.
Sure. And so these kids grew up, but it's all on television.
Yes.
And they walk in to a live show
1 minute.
For
1
the
minute
first
clips.
time.
That's one of the things that really hurt our industry for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Is that comedy was broken down into 1 minute clips. And then people, number one, judged your entire career on a 1 minute thing, right? Number two, people like me or like a Henry Cho or like we're storytellers. It's hard to break me down into 1 minute clips, right? Like, it's very hard. So that people were making huge stars or comedy stars out of people who had these viral clips, but that doesn't mean that they had a full act.
Exactly.
So weird.
And they what we both know is, everybody knows it, and I don't care whether it's comedy or any other type of performance. When you're not in the energy, there's no way you're laughing as hard watching a television as you do when you come in. But they don't know that. They have grown up their whole life watching all these comedians, and they've formed their whole opinion on what is funny off of that. And then they walk into here. And I go up to them after the show, and they're like, they're wide-eyed. They're like, oh, my God.
Well, that's what happened to me.
They're like, I never imagined I would laugh as hard as I laughed tonight.
Well,
it
that's
blows
what
them
happened
away.
to me when I was a kid. I loved stand-up. I loved it. I loved it from when I was a little kid. And I had a fake ID that I used to sneak into my friends would all go drinking. And I was like, just let me go with you downtown Cleveland. And I'd go to the Cleveland Improv and I'd watch comedy shows because I had this ID. But I didn't think I could be a comic. I had no idea. And then a woman came through, and she was young. She was an MC, and she wasn't as funny in my young estimation and I went home and said to my family, like, I saw this woman, like, and she's not famous, and I'm as funny as she is. And then famous last words, it was a bet, they were like, I bet and do an open mic, and for $50 I did an open mic night that I wrote a joke that I later did on the Tonight Show, but it was a long in between. But I all of a sudden, like, I went, oh, you don't have to be famous. You can make a living at this, and you can figure it out. Now, I probably should have done something else 30 years later. But
hey, man, we to have spent your entire life, or professional life, your entire adult professional life, all of us doing nothing but creating joy. That's what we do. We create joy. That's your legacy. And I go, is there a better legacy than that? I mean, there's doctors that save people's lives, and there's this, that, and the other. But I mean, here I am, been in the same, big fish in a little pond. I am 2-county famous like a son of a bitch. But it's like, after being here for almost 40 years, and you walk around and people see you and everybody knows you, but they see you, and as soon as they see you, huge smile goes up on their face. They're immediately happy. Sometimes they start to laugh, giggle, because that's the memory that comes to them.
Awesome.
Is either it was me or something they experienced at the club, and you go, what a wonderful way to have gone through your life.
Yeah, but that is exactly also why I had to stop myself and stay off of the internet a lot, because you can throw up a clip that you gave your heart and soul to, and you know that it's a funny joke, and you know that they react to it well, but literally you'll see all these, and they call them trolls, but it's hard to ignore them when that's not funny. That's not she's old. She's ugly, and your whole being. And you go, wait a second. All I was trying to do is make someone laugh. I mean, I don't know what people who are on there say. I don't know what people who espouse evil stuff. What kind of comments do they get that's much different than the ones I get?
Well, now this is just me, and it's the way I am, but I don't read any of that.
Yeah, you have to not.
I don't read any of that shit. I don't give a shit. I really, truly don't give a shit. And because how does that change anything? How does that, it changes nothing. So I know at least there were 3 times in like a year period where I got several texts from friends going, hey, somebody has created a Facebook page that's you. I know it's not you. Blah, 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 blah. So then I call my media guy, and he go check it out. And he goes, yeah. And I go, what we need to do? And he goes, well, we call Facebook. And I get it pulled down. So, it happened like 3 times. So after that, literally the 4th time somebody sent me anything, somebody's crazy, I go, I'm flattered. Yeah. I hope there's 12 of them.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Well, you can't not be on it. That is the problem. See, that was the other thing. Like, I missed out on all the internet hype because I kept thinking, you know, what you did on television is what counted. What you did on the stage is what counted. So when people be like, you need a podcast, I'm like, what could I possibly talk about? Because I left it all on stage. Why would I take clips of my act and put it up? That's stupid. I don't want to be on social media.
Right.
And now you have to be a social media specialist. Like being a comic is this much. Telling jokes on stage is this much of comedy now. It's advertising. It's doing podcasts. It's figuring out how to put clips together. It's a mess. It's a mess.
And that's where several years ago, I realized when I started to see the handwriting on the wall that print ads and television and radio spots was bullshit anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I go, no, it's
social media ads.
It's all social media, and I go, I am not the kind of person that is going to dive into that. I mean, it's just not me. And so I hired a guy.
That's smart. I have a social media team now that
you know.
But, you know, it's also, I'll tell you one thing. Like, it's so weird. It's a double-edged sword. You know what's great about social media? Is that some of your old clips can show up, and there are people who have never seen me. I'm not. And they'll go, oh, my God, she's funny. How long has she been doing it? Not even having it. And then they go on a rabbit hole and see all of the Tonight Shows, all of the specials, and they go down it so they can see your entire body of work in like a 6-hour time frame.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's all, the bad part of it is the negative shit that pops up. The good part of it is that now as artists, you are not relegated to 4 networks, 5 shows,
for sure.
5 powerful people in the frickin' world that decide who's going to make it and who's not going to make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that we've talked about just recently is you go, Jesus Christ, you stream through, all right, what do I want to watch tonight? And you go off cable finally, and now you're streaming. And you go to, okay, let's go to Prime, let's go to Apple, let's go to Disney.
Yeah, we have just as many.
Let's go to YouTube, I got 7 platforms, and there's more, and every one of them has all this stuff on it.
Yeah.
And every one of them have all this original series and movies and documentaries and stand-up performances. And a lot of them are, you know, okay. But a lot of them are really, really good. A lot. And I go, that just shows how many talented people there are out there. And I said, I'm going to guarantee you, back in the 3-channel Johnny Carson, Ed Sullivan days, there were that many people back then too. But
they wouldn't take a risk.
There was
on
no
it.
way to get through.
Yeah,
there was no way to get through.
They wouldn't take a risk on it. And also, we're in the 3rd generation of stand-up.
Oh yeah.
So it's definitely like an option. There weren't a lot of women. When I started, there were 20 women that were on the road, if that. I mean, they're huge. When people always go, Joan Rivers, yes, but Joan Rivers was the host of The Tonight Show before I ever told a joke. They go, Roseanne. Well, Roseanne was already huge with her own TV show.
Sure.
They were Paula Pound. They were all there. Ellen, they were all there, but they had all been on TV a million times. There weren't a lot of road females because it's a hard life. And back then we had to stay. You were always kind of put hotels, but we had to stay in condos. I mean, I stayed in a condo with a guy that Vince Champ guy who
was a rapist.
A serial rapist.
Absolutely.
But if I'd have complained about, I clearly I didn't know that he was a serial rapist, but I literally was in a condo with him at a night that he went and raped a girl.
Right.
But I didn't know. I don't know anything about what he did. Everybody had their own rooms.
Right.
And,
well, I know at one point, and I didn't think about this until my daughter was playing around with maybe getting into it, right? So a couple of the female comics, I think it was Valerie Storm and Jody White, that were from here.
Yeah.
We're talking to her, and Janet Williams, I think, and they were telling her, go, look, if your dad's out on the road and after a show he meets a group of people talking to him, and they all go, come over to Joe's Bar and Grill and hang out with us. He can go do that. I can't. I'm not going over to Joe's Bar and Grill and hang out with a bunch of people. I don't care if there's even girls there and stuff. It's too risky. It's just too dangerous. So it's well, the way they explain it to her is y'all's life on the road is your fun is on stage and inside the comedy club. But the rest of the time, you're like kind of sequestered and alone.
Well, I became really good friends with a lot of the staff at clubs that I used to go to. And that became fun because then you would come back and you could trust them and they became your friends. And it'd be like going to a town where you go see your friend, you know. And then the guys, but because I was on and in those condos so much, a lot of those guys, because I also chose not to date any of them.
Yeah.
So that made it, and not to insult anybody's choices, but I grew up with boys. So I knew that if I dated one, that there was no way that I wasn't going to be able to refute I didn't sleep with any of them who said that they did. Right? So I knew that was going to be, I grew up with, I knew that locker room talk before people talked about locker room talk. You know what I mean? So they looked out for me a little bit. So I would just stay. But that's what I did in L.A. When I moved to L.A., I just stayed within the comedy community, which is probably good and bad for me because I didn't try to venture. I just started acting in the past couple of years because I got confident enough in myself. Back then, I just was like, I want to be a comic. And I felt like, how stupid. When they try to give me development deals, I'm like, well, unless I'm the star of the show, I should have been the best friend. What a dummy.
See, I started the exact opposite because I started in theater in college, got a theater degree, but this is 1979, 1980.
Sure.
Comedy, stand-up comedy, and I was in a progressive theater program.
Yeah.
No one mentioned stand-up comedy as even a possibility of something to do.
Wow.
Because back then, nobody knew how to get into it.
Sure.
I mean, you're talking about 1979, 1980. There might have been 24 comedy clubs in the whole damn country.
I bet there weren't even that. I bet they just took over. I bet there was the New York and the L.A. and in between.
Here and there. And then, so when I started, the only thing that got me into it was after a summer stock theater thing, one of the actors was from Long Island. I'd never been to New York. And he was like, hey, come out with me. We'll stay at my parents' house, and I'll take you into the city, and I'll show you around, blah, blah, blah. So we were just walking around one night, and we see Catch a Rising Star.
So cool.
And one of the girls in the theater department had told me about it. She goes, oh, we were in New York. We're in this place, Catch a Rising Star. She didn't even know it was stand-up comedy. She goes, it was all one acts, like
monology.
These monologues. They were all up doing these monologues, right? Yeah. And she goes, I was watching them thinking, I think Les could do that. And so she was like, she was telling me, she goes, so anyway, we see the place. And I go, I remember that time. So we go in. It's open mic. It's like Thursday. It's open mic night.
How weird.
We don't know.
Serendipity.
We don't know open mic night from anything, me and this other guy. So we walk in, we sit down. And out of the 10 comics we watched, the MC was good. A couple of them were okay. The rest of them were horrible. Just horrible.
Sure.
But they're open micers. They're not pros. We don't know that. So we get up and we're walking out and I go, if that's stand-up comedy in Manhattan, I'm like, I can do this for God's sake.
And back then it was jokey jokes too, right? It wasn't like
it was
telling
just
stories
bad.
of your life.
It was just bad. They didn't, But I wasn't watching professionals, And so then fast forward, I was going out to L.A. to just be an actor. And a buddy of mine was in Denver who was doing a lot of documentary film. So he had film equipment. I never worked in front of a camera, only on stage. Okay. So I thought, on my way out there, I'm going to stop out, hang out with you for about 6 months, get a bartending job or something. And let's just play with the camera. I don't know what I'm like in front of a camera. I have no idea before I go out to Los Angeles. And there was a comedy club, the Comedy Works, was in Denver. And we started going down there. and just watching open mic night. And, of course, then open mic night was sold out. 250 people packed every Monday. And we go down and, watch. It'd be 15 comics go up, and they had a little improv troupe that kind of ran it. And then we finally got the guts, me and my buddy, put together some sketches because we didn't know how to do stand-up.
Okay.
We put some a couple sketches together. We put one sketch together. Signed up, went down there. They had us in a back room that was the stock room waiting, and Roseanne is sitting on a case of beer.
Hysterical.
Drinking a gin and tonic.
Hasn't been discovered
And we
yet.
had, oh God, no. She's open micer.
She's still in Denver.
But she was we'd seen her before, and she was always one of the better ones, but really quiet and kind of to herself. And so, we went up that night, and it went okay. And I thought then, maybe this is something I can do to make a little side money when I'm trying to get acting jobs rather than bartending or waiting tables. So we started going down on normal nights, and after the show, we'd go up to you, the headliner, introduce ourselves, and then if it was somebody we could strike a conversation with, we'd buy them a beer and just pick their brain.
I did that at the radio station. So what I started, I did an open mic. It was sponsored by a radio station. They hired me to come in and be the sidekick of the morning show. And then 6 months later, that guy left, and I got a new partner who actually came to the first show.
Oh, nice.
That's who I was talking to. And I did that for 2.5 years while I'm an open mic, house MC, and moved my way up, start getting paid. And but I would bring all the people from the comedy club in every Friday, and we'd interview them. And if they were nice enough and they were kind enough to me, I'd take them to breakfast afterwards and pick their brain. And that's how I was able to start comedy. Because when I quit my job in July of ¡94, I immediately that weekend went to work. And I worked 36 weeks that year, that first year of comedy, which is a lot. And they were long weeks, Tuesday through Sunday back then, 3 shows on Saturday.
Sure.
But that's because most of those guys like Don Myrera and George Lopez and Jamie Foxx and D.L. Hughley and John Panette and Jimmy Brogan, they took me on the road with them.
Nice.
So they were just nice to me.
We finally, because this was truly 1980, 81.
Yeah.
And the owner was George McKelvey. George liked us because we did sketches, and George had been in an improv troupe called Ace Trucking Company that got on the Tonight Show and stuff like that. But then when we talked to George about, when are we ready or not, he goes, "You guys ain't cut out for stand-up comedy." He goes, "I like you, but you're not punchy enough. You're not. You're more sketch comedy. It's not stand-up. And." We thought, this stupid old fucker doesn't know what he's talking about. We're cutting edge.
Hysterical.
And but then we talked to a comic from New York who gave us the best advice ever. He
said, "Go home."
That's exactly what he said.
No way. How did I know that?
He said, comedy clubs are opening all over the United States right now. It's an explosion.
Hysterical.
And he said,
that's not how they told me to go home. They told me really to go home.
You guys are from the Southeast. He goes, there's a comedy club in Atlanta. There's a comedy club in Birmingham. There's a comedy club in Charlotte. There's some comedy clubs down in Florida. He goes, go back to the South. Zany's was in Nashville. He said, go back to the Southeast where you're from. Get good. Get good. Get to where you're one of the better acts there before you ever even think about coming to Los Angeles or New York.
Yeah.
They'll just eat you guys up right
that's
now.
It.
So that's exactly
advice.
what we did. We came back to the Southeast. We're going to go to Atlanta to Punchline. But then we heard about a guy who had 3 comedy clubs, one in Tampa, one in St. Pete, one here in Sarasota. And a buddy of ours told us about it.
The Triangle of Death.
And we thought, 3 open mic nights. 3 open mic nights in Florida. What the fuck? Live on the beach, get a job bartending, waiting. And that's exactly what we did, and that's how we got started. Cool. And by 80, and that was 82, and by 84 we were touring, and a big part of that was there weren't that many acts.
Yeah.
Yet.
No, for sure.
There weren't that many acts yet. And it's funny, talking about the female comics. When we first got out, I worked with Diane Ford.
Sure, me too.
I worked with Paula Poundstone.
Yep, me too.
And they were two of the first. And
Elaine Boozler.
Thought they were, and Elaine.
Monica Piper.
And I thought they were so, especially Paula, I just thought was the most amazing thing.
So funny.
I worked with her for 3 weeks. I was the opening act for 3 weeks. I watched her, and you're talking about 7-8 shows a week. She opened every show with 10 minutes of different material. Every single show was a different 10 minutes, and I was just jaw dropped. I was like, how the fuck?
So talented. Talented.
That's a dedicated writer. I mean, she just wrote incessantly.
Yeah, I saw her once do a show, and she laid on the ground and did it. Yeah. And I'm like, that's freedom.
Pull a Pop-Tart out of her pocket and do 10 minutes on the Pop-Tart. The first show I took her to, and we were in Richmond, Virginia, and I had to drive. I had a car. I drove her. Well, I'm not good with directions at all. So I get lost.
Because back then we had to have a full-on atlas.
So I get lost. We went.
Oh, where's Ron? Does he know the show?
Oh, he knows. He knows.
Okay.
So we went through the same toll booth 3 times. 3 damn times. and finally I made it there.
That is, her first 10 minutes were about you.
Was going through that, and it was hilarious. And I was like, oh, my God. Afterwards, I was like, I can't believe that. She goes, Les, do you think that's the first time that's ever happened to me in my life? She goes, I live in a world of toll booths up around New York. Da, da, da. She goes, that's happened before. I've been lost and gone through the same toll booth twice. Maybe not 3 times. But she goes, when something like that happens to me, I immediately know I need to write about it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. You're friends with, I love Bobby Collins. But I love Bobby Collins.
Bobby was just here.
Yes. I love Bobby Collins because here I am. I'm an open mic. No, I'm a house MC in Cleveland. So that was, and I fought to be they had 2 or 3 that alternated, and Bobby was coming, and I loved Bobby's comedy. And he had a piece of paper that had his intro. And the owner of that comedy club owned a bunch of different other comedy clubs, and they had rules for their MCs. I mean, and they were like written. You weren't allowed to talk to the audience, right? You weren't allowed to swear. Your job was to be humorous, but really was to keep the show moving.
Correct.
Right? Do the announcements, announce the comics, and you better not show up with any notes. There's no notes, no piece of paper from the house MC, the MC, to go on stage. You better be professional enough to know your act, to know the note. You better memorize the announcements, whatever.
Absolutely.
So he hands me an index card that's laminated with all his credits. I mean, it was front and back. I can't remember them all. So I said a couple. That's
Ron Hortman.
Very funny, Ron Hortman.
Yeah.
And I said, so I tried to remember as many as I could. And I said, please welcome Bobby Collins. And afterwards, he comes off stage, and he goes, let me see that index card. And he goes, I have all these credits. I worked hard to have all of them. One day you might have them, but you have none now. You need to announce all of these credits. You need to read every single one. And I was so nervous, but that spark of who I am was still in there. He said, you take this on stage and you read from it. And I don't have the strength to say I'm not allowed to take it or that. So I took it up there and I just went like this. I just go, Bobby has been on. And I just I watch this again, and then afterward he goes, "Okay, kid, I got it. Like, it was so funny. He says he doesn't remember that. I go, well, I do.
Bobby has been playing. Bobby was one of the first celebrities we ever booked, and he was the first celebrity we ever booked that I did not know. Because the first celebrity we booked was Jeff Foxworthy. Because I knew Jeff.
The best guy in the world.
Right. Because I knew Jeff.
Yes.
And I was nervous about doing it, because it was, 10 times more money than we normally paid. And I called Jeff, and I said, we want to try it. And Jeff was like, call my agent.
Yeah.
Do it. Sign whatever they say. the
Yeah.
money is, and just realize at the end of the weekend we will see how much money we made,
Yeah.
you made, and we'll split it up. Don't worry about it.
Yes.
And he was, that's Jeff, And then, of course, that didn't even come into play.
Yes, of course.
He sold, plenty of tickets,
Yes.
And then the next was Pam Stone, because Pam
Oh, wow.
was a waitress at the Punchline in Atlanta when I first met her.
Sure.
And she was one of those that's a waitress watching all these acts going, I can do this
Yes.
shit. And so then Pam came in. So Bobby was the first that we didn't really know. And I went to the airport and picked him up. And I was walking up to him and going, hi, Bobby, I'm Les McCurdy. And he goes, is that real? He goes, is that real? or are you just doing an Elvis impersonation for me right now?
Hysterical.
I said, that's
Have
real,
fun,
Bobby.
Ron.
That's me, buddy. And he's been here every year. I mean,
Well, he lives down in Florida now, doesn't he?
they got a place over on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So he's got his place in L.A. He's got his place in New York that he's had forever, and he got the place over here. But, I mean, literally, it's so cool with someone like Bobby that we've grown up together. We're
Yes.
like, our relationship is us sitting here talking about our daughters when they were babies,
Isn't that
and now we're
crazy?
talking about their marriage and their
And the
kids
grandchildren
and the
and
whole
all
9
that
yards.
stuff.
Yeah, it's wild.
Well, that's like even me. Look at when I honestly I joke about it in my act, but when I say I was pregnant, no one had done that because most of the women when I started, to be fair, who had kids were already famous, right?
Right.
Or were lesbians and they didn't have the back then. It just is. It's not. People can judge it all they want. So there weren't I didn't have a lot of role models of how you could be on the road with your kid. So it's one of the reasons we left and went to L.A. And now they're doing specials pregnant. But I lost a special because I was pregnant. Like,
Right.
yeah, they
Yeah.
pulled the special from
Yeah,
me,
nobody
HBO.
knew how to even handle that.
Yeah, they were like, nobody's going to want to see you tell jokes when you're pregnant.
I
I'm
know,
like,
isn't it crazy?
it's weird now. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Well, I just, and I can't tell you how many, you've heard it, how many male club owners over the years, especially when we're going back 20, 30 years, that literally would say to me, yeah, I booked some of the women, but in all honesty, you got to admit, they're just not as funny as the
Yeah.
guys. And I'm like, that's just not true.
Well, it's just a different. It's just a different muscle. Like, you know what I mean? It's a different thing. And I think also what we talked about earlier, they didn't do the hangout. We didn't do the hangout. So when you don't do the hangout, you miss that buddy time, the good old boy thing. You miss hangouts are important in any job. I try to tell that, like, even my brother, like, for the long time and in his new job would just go right home and they'd have little get-togethers with I go, you have to, in any job, hang out with your coworkers in order for your life and your longevity, because there might be that day where they go, oh, well, I'm mad at him. He didn't show up at it. But if they know that you have a kid and they know that you have this, and then maybe they'll have a little empathy for you or whatever. You know,
Right.
you have a laugh with someone. If you have a laugh with someone, which is why I love when they come to comedy clubs, like work-related events. If you have a laugh with someone, you have a better chance of having an easier day with someone.
Oh, well, no doubt about it. And, it's all networking.
Yeah.
It's all networking. I don't give a shit what you do if you're going to move, unless you're just, you let them go, unless you're the genius, unless you're just this out of the box genius person. And most of the people I know, I go, I'm telling you, I know you're not, and
Yeah.
you know you're not. It is about, there is a lot of who you know. And I go, nepotism, well, that's natural to people. Who do you want to help? If you're going to help somebody, you're going to help a stranger, or are you going to help the person that you already have a relationship
It's
with?
one of the reasons that I also, again, moved home with my son, because number one, I couldn't hire someone like I couldn't hire someone who would watch my son. Like, I needed to have someone who loved him, who knew
Right.
how crazy that I am, that I will hurt you. If something, you will not be standing on the corner with the stroller in the crosswalk, right? When you see those things, if you're driving on the street and you see the stroller on the street and the nanny that's a nanny. That if that's a mother behind that stroller, then that mother's got a drinking problem, because that is someone who gets paid to watch that child, you know?
Right. What little town, if you don't mind? Where did
Meadville, PA. No,
Oh, okay.
That's what happened. We got the show. That's why I didn't see a lot of people for a long time too, because for a while we had a TV show about me leaving LA, being a wife, a mother, and a comedian, and it was on WeTV, and I would go out, and I never gave up stand up, but I was really trying to make sure it made sense that I could get home and be around for all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Plus, I lost my agent, so I have a new agent now, but for a long time, I had to start making those phone calls myself.
Right.
2016, I'm 26 years in. What's 2000? I'm horrible with math. That's why I'm a comic.
9 years.
I'm 9 years ago.
9.
So I'm 30 years this year. So I'm 21 years in, and I'm making my own phone calls, trying to fill my book, and then that all came back. But that was hard.
And I know it's hard, but from my perspective, when you have an act like yourself that's been around for a while, and everybody knows that you're an act whose reputation is you're a solid pro, like solid pro.
Oh, that's sweet.
You're
Thank you.
Well, you are. You are, and you're somebody that is well respected in the industry just because you've always been a solid professional, right? And I've had this happen. And and then you get to the point where you have an agent, and the agent makes the calls for you. So you don't talk to Tammy anymore.
Yeah.
You talk to Tammy's agent. And I'm gonna tell you, for the most part, and I get along with several of the agents, but now Bronwyn does it all.
Yeah.
But I'd much rather talk to a comic than an agent.
Yeah.
All
but
day
you
long.
lose that muscle because because it's not about the stand up. You need them for the other stuff. You
Right.
need them for the specials. You need the
Right.
and so immediately when I got canceled, I just started picking up the phone and calling, and that's the only way I'm still a comic, because I had all those years of work where I did have that relationship
Right.
with a comedy club owner. I did have, and I don't know how we missed it. Maybe what happens too is that you go call me on Monday, and then Monday comes and I'm doing something else, and then the book is filled, and you just don't think about it, or you're whatever, and that's how. Or I'm never coming to Florida during hurricane season or summer again.
I think a lot with you, and it was that you were successful, and I don't think you had down weeks much.
No.
You had plenty of work out there. So, and that happens, once again, lots of times. You get your group of comics that, what was kind of a thing with, and I think it happened with all comedy club owners that have been in business for a long time. You kind of, after about 10 years in, you got this stable of comics.
Yeah.
And, you got 52 weeks, all right? So,
Yeah.
But you have maybe 70 comics. And you love them all.
Right.
You love them all.
Well, and I didn't want to play a lot of clubs.
Yeah.
I'm playing a lot of small performing arts
Well, there you
theaters,
go.
I'd rather just go do one, 300 seat
Well,
show.
and our thing is to add another comic in means that somebody has to
I know.
wait later to get their gig, So you kind of get into too much of a rotation with
Sure.
that group, and you really don't go outside of it. You kind of build that. And so whoever's not in that rotation just kind of you're not looking for them. They've got their
It's the same
clubs.
way
You're not
from
looking for
a comic's
Yeah, you're not
perspective, too.
looking to
So-
come in. But then what we got to was there just got to be a point, and I know Pam and my assistant Bronwyn, who does all the booking now, there was a point where they go, Les, I'm just going to show you the calendars for the past 5 years. They look very
Similar.
the same.
But, I
and we
think that's
gotta,
smart.
we need to break out of that.
But you have to build, this is my mandate for myself, and then I'm going to have to go to the restroom before I
Yeah.
can say so. I'm picking about 15 cities that I'm going to ride till the end of my career.
Okay.
And I'm going to do it every year, those 15, and then whatever happens, because I do a lot of corporate, because
Yeah.
I'm clean, and we'll do whatever is in between. But I want at least 15 cities that I'm sure I'm working every year and a half somehow.
Right,
So
right.
they come back. Then it also forces. Well, sorry to hit this. Forces me to have new material too.
Right.
Right. So then that would, because I know people might have come to see, and we're just gonna build those, and you know, hopefully we make Sarasota one of those too.
so,
You
too.
know,
I hope
because
so,
I
too.
think that would. I mean, I just think you got to have a plan. I'm gonna do what I do until I forget my act.
Watching you tonight, you know, just again, it was so wonderful to watch you up on this stage. And the thing I was watching with your show is some acts, they have their audience, but to introduce people who are not their audience, especially, it might work, it might not. You know what I mean? They're kind of specific to their audience. But you have you don't have that kind of act. You have a kind of act that plays to such a broad audience that we can introduce new people to you in a lot of different ways.
Hope so.
And that will come in and go, oh, I've heard of her. I never, and then they're like, oh man, I love Tammy.
Well, you know, I literally do that joke. That's very kind of you to say, by the way. It's hard for me to take compliments. That's probably the reason I'm a comic. But there was a conscious decision about 15 years ago to write my act as if we're all friends.
Yeah.
And I just haven't seen you in a long time. So I made that decision. And then probably about 10 years ago, I realized, I looked at my audience and the people were coming with their kids. And I was like, okay, now I got to speak to a couple of the different, and someone's grandparents were there. And it's like, all these generations are here. So then I started talking about all that. Now it's a little bit difficult because the things I started talking about and you know, are now like, now we're getting older. So it's hard to be trite with getting older, but that's a problem for everybody. You should be lucky to get old. You know?
There's an age that everybody is like, we know that there's an age where everybody has to come to Sarasota.
That's where you should end.
This is where you end your career, Tammy.
I'll tell you, the moment my kid goes to school, I don't know if I can live here, Les, because I don't know if checking if there's a Burmese python in my toilet is worth not paying state income tax. I said that on stage.
Yes, you did. But it's all right.
I don't know. I will be here a lot because I said, we'll come down for like a month at a time and I'll just roll around the state.
You at least want to be here in January and February.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
You don't want to be in Pennsylvania in
January
and February.
Well, and now it's a part of me being old saying, excuse me, but I have a show to do and I have to find the rest.
Yes,
by the way, this is a beautiful green room, by the way.
Pam just redid all this.
It's gorgeous. Tell her she did a terrific
I
job.
will.
I miss seeing her this time.
Her brother is in town from D.C., so the whole family. She's got a sister and another brother in Florida. So when he comes down, they're all close.
Aww.
And that's kind of rare, that 4 brothers and sisters, and they're all very, very close. So they're all together. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to be leaving because they're there doing that kind of thing. So I'm so glad we had this little time.
I'm so glad we had this time.
All right, Carol. And but yes, and just again, what a pleasure to have you back. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you
and I
for
can't
having
wait to get you back.
And you have to stay here in case he starts to announce me.
I will. I'll walk
so
up.
You could run up.
I'll walk up. I will. I'm not going anywhere until you have taken